Welcome to Attacks of Opportunity. I'm your host, John Sprunk, and with me, as many times before, is my good buddy and co-host, Eric Hardenbrook.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Fantastic. I'm excited about this one.
Good. This is going to be a good one. Today, we're going to discuss, if you saw a couple of episodes ago, Eric and I discussed different movies that you could use for inspiration for Dungeons & Dragons adventures, campaigns, storylines, that kind of stuff. And today we're going to focus on one in particular and kind of talk through, some of the ideas about how to bring a film and borrow, let's just say steal, some of his best ideas to make an adventure in your real D&D campaign. And we chose Conan the Barbarian, the original Schwarzenegger version. So we're both big fans. I've seen it probably, a dozen times, maybe more, who knows, over the years. I grew up on Schwarzenegger, so.
I went back through it for this specifically. Like I have I forget if it's a special edition or whatever. I have the DVD. So I threw it in the player and I was like, okay, play, pause. All right. And I would take notes. And I was like, all right, we're going through this one, shot for shot. We're figuring this out. So it was a very interesting it's a very interesting way to look at the movie, even though I've seen it bunches of times.
Right. Okay. Well, that's awesome. So we're both very familiar with this movie. It's one of our favorites. It was both in our top 5, I believe, when we did that other video. So I want you to start it off with, Eric. Initial impressions, rewatching the movie with an eye towards a D&D adventure. Tell me some initial impressions, please.
So, with something like this, you're talking about a movie that, if you're a fan of fantasy, you're aware of it one way or the other. It comes up. You probably have seen it. If you haven't seen it, you've heard of it. So my first impression was that there may be a thought in there where you're going to have to take some time and consider the pieces that you pull out of this, because if the only thing you do is file off the serial number, other people are going to recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be, there's pros and cons to that. So I'll circle back to that. But the other aspect of this is, when I watch the movie, I think we have to break it into 2 pieces in terms of game related material, because for a really significant portion of the beginning of that movie, it's the character's backstory. So that part could go to the players. You'd have to work out with the players, what character classes, what you're talking about, but all the way up to the pit fighting, it's all backstory. You include those things, and that's the sort of stuff that you talk about. In fact, you just talked about in the video I caught this afternoon. I believe you just posted it. How to help your DM come up with some good backstory.
Yeah. If you could come up with one like the Conan movie, the first half of that, whatever, you'd be making your DM pretty proud.
And that's the sort of thing like you said in that piece. Talk with the DM about it. Don't get so settled into locking yourself into this one piece, but give some flexibility to it. So if you say, hey, I want to have a, my parents were killed background, I'm an orphan. Okay. But did you have thoughts about how how this growing up process went? And you picked, was raised in a temple. The Conan option was raised as a slave.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sounds simple when you break it down like that, but that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So I thought the same thing when I first watched it again for this video. That the first half, or roughly, is backstory. I would say, but for me, backstory up until he defeats the witch and throws her in the fire after having sex with her, because he's still a single player at that point. Now, that doesn't mean that we wouldn't play that. Not all the time, but there are times when I will pull one player out of a group to do like a pre-campaign one shot. Let's as an interesting idea that would get you to the campaign's front door. Are you interested? Great, let's play it out. It's a little railroady sometimes because it has to be at a certain stopping point. Um, but that would be kind of cool to have Conan once he grows up on the wheel of pain there and gets released to be a pit slave, fighting slave. I'm not sure much interesting role playing there is, just fighting over and over again. But okay, we could just talk it out, and then but from once he is freed, that little thing, he escapes, he runs, he fights off the wolves, he finds the first sword, he wanders, he finds the witch, blah blah blah. I mean, that could be like a 2-hour one shot with your player if you wanted to play that out, as long as they knew at the end of it he'll meet Subo, I think the name is, and then the party begins to form. So but that was an idea I had when I watched it.
Yeah. So that's one of those things, Subutai or Valeria, any of those characters you could do this with. But the one thing that I'm thinking of, if you're a newbie DM, the pit fighter thing, take that one character and just run quick pit fights to practice the combat system.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't know the system, you can't juggle 4 people at the same time trying to do stuff. Test drive it one-on-one.
It's a great idea.
So that way you know, and I say that because I think we've discussed previously, I have kind of stalled or stuck in 3.5, but recently I've started to dig into 5th edition, and I couldn't run a game in 5e right now. I'm still learning the rules. Now, I shouldn't say I couldn't run a game. I could, but the rules, it would be very much the story and not a lot of rules.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still taking the time to figure out, advantage roll versus disadvantage roll. Never used that before.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's a good point. So, and then so if we decide that once the actual campaign begins, and then he starts to accumulate party members, to join the party, which it's the movie does a really good job of this, and I don't think a lot of fantasy movies do a great job of how a hero attracts some followers along the way and making them interesting and unique enough that they're separate persons, not just Nameless Warrior 1, Nameless Warrior Part 2, guy with a beard and whatever. So I like that they did it that way, and that's a good lesson, I think, for DMs of all levels, that when your players are making up character ideas, I always try and stress, what makes you unique. How are you different than the other fighters in the world, the other barbarians, the other wizards? What makes you tick a little differently? Because otherwise, it's too easy, I think, to just use it as a crutch. Oh, I'm just a generic wizard, so I'm going to do this and that, and I'm going to have a long beard and pointed hat, and I'm like, well, okay, that's been done 1,000 times. Now, how are you different? And I think when the players start to dig into those kind of differences, that's when they really start to find the character, the real essence. You know what I mean? So the movie does a good job. You have, obviously Conan is a barbarian, a few words, very strong, now very skilled in sword fighting, not very worldly. You have Subutai, who is like the opposite, smaller guy, ranged attack, the archer fighter, but much more worldly. He's been around quite a bit. He can sort of give Conan the streetwise, aspect. And Valeria, of course, now we've got another character, also a fighter, I could say, a fighter type, definitely. So we're still playing to one class type overall. But, now she's probably, I think of her, she's got more smarts as far as being a real thief. She actually knows what she's doing when she's thieving, and more focused than the other 2 guys. I mean, Conan's focused on his revenge tale, but not on the adventure in front of him, unless it is to get him towards his last goal. And Subutai pretty much is along for the ride to get some wealth and have some fun before he dies. Valeria is pretty much the one that says, no. You can see her being the member of the party who forces them to have a plan before they engage in a fight, maybe. So I like how they play off each other, of course. But yeah, as far as the party goes, there's not a wizard. There is a cleric later on, a shaman, but he's not. He's kind of like a party member, but we'll get to that. Yeah.
Well, so one of the things that I did when I was watching this is I literally have a page of notes of trying to break it down and use the main characters as character classes. So Conan would, of course, he would be a barbarian. For Valeria, I figured she'd be a multi-class. She's like warrior rogue,
Hmm.
right? Subutai is specialist archer. I don't know what variation on that the rules would be. You could call it a of course the word escapes me now. Once you achieve a certain level in 3.5, you can add these. It's almost like a new class.
Oh yeah, prestige classes.
Prestige class. Thank you.
Right.
Um, he could be a prestige class archer of some kind. And I would even say that Akiro could be multi-class. He could be wizard and cleric.
Hmm.
And I think it's really interesting what you brought up. Is he a party member because he doesn't travel with them in this one? He does in the second one, but we don't want to talk about that.
Well, at the end of the first one, he does go to join them in the last fight. I mean, he does show up in his version of armor, so he does show. And again, he helps. Obviously, he reses Conan. So, is he more of an NPC that they use for knowledge and for specialty spells they don't have themselves, or is he? I would probably say he a sage slash medic in a campaign. But he's a good example of how you can use a high powered NPC the party can go to for advice, for knowledge they don't have, for spells they don't have access to yet, or whatever. You know, it's an interesting idea, and he's just a very interesting fellow. You make it interesting, make it unique, make it memorable to meet him. He's got a certain way of talking. Lives in a elevated hut on the plains of wind and stuff. And if all of your NPCs have that sort of impact in the short screen time they've got, then you're going to be a very convincing DM for your players.
Absolutely. And you can do the same thing with breaking down the opposition. So you have a cult leader, Thulsa Doom. You have a king from a neighboring nation, Thorgrim. No, Thorgrim's one of the warriors.
Right.
The guy that Max von Sydow plays, the king.
Yes, the king. I know what you mean. Obviously, yeah.
So, he's going to be an NPC. Maybe you don't fill out his stats a lot, but you got to have stats for the cult leader. And then you have his two right-hand men, which that's Thorgrim and Rexor.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like high-level warriors they're going to be part of the team that you're taking on. And then you have the creature set. You have the wolves, you have a giant snake, you have the there was another one. Oh, you could do cultists, like random cultists.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily a monster, but to like come up with a stack of generic cultists, because if you're in like the scene at the well when they're trying to climb back up the ropes,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just Thorgrim that they have to deal with. There's the other cultists that are all around, and she actually attacks one of them, shove them out of the way, kind of a thing. But there should be kind of some stats in case they blow a roll or something go. It doesn't have to go the exact way the movie went.
Of course.
So throw some generic stats at those, stack those people up, have them ready to go. I'm an old school person when it comes to this kind of stuff. I have a tendency to lay them out on index cards. Go to the dollar store, it's $1, you get 100, and just write like core stats on them: hit points, armor class, spells, special abilities. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Really not much else. Treasure maybe. And I just have a stack of these index cards, and when I need them, let's pull them out and they're ready to go.
Right. That's a great idea.
So, you've got characters for the players. You've developed NPCs. You have monsters. The one other piece that I looked at with this, and I may have gone a little overboard with it, was maps.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have the opportunity to either go kind of shot by shot through the movie like I did and lay some stuff out, and just grab some graph paper, man, and start making sketches.
Mm-hmm.
and you can draw the entire cult tower and all of the grounds that go with it, and it becomes your piece of graph paper that fits the movie. And now you've got NPCs, monsters, maps, characters, but you got a whole adventure.
Yep, you got all the pieces right there, and especially story, which is something I know you and I both focus on. I like something you said earlier about you don't have to have the same result. So even if you lay out the breadcrumbs that the party is going to try to infiltrate the temple of Set or whatever god you're using in your world, you don't have to force it to follow the same results. What if the party bungles it? What if they make some really bad decisions, don't get the eye of Set, one gets captured, somebody else gets killed, two escape with their lives. Now they got to figure out how to get, they're going to try and rescue their other friend. Is it possible with the temple being alerted? And how do the NPCs, the cult, react to this? Obviously, stuff. But what I like about using a movie or a show, as far as story goes, is that you as a DM know how things can go. You know that Thulsa Doom is collecting followers, and you know that that's going to continue whether the PC stop him or not. So I know you have this sort of these machinations in the background that you kind of know where they're going to go unless the PCs take aims to stop them. And maybe your party will find a different way to attack it that's even more effective than what the movie did. And as long as you're open to making those changes, you'll know, okay, well, if they get captured by Thulsa Doom, now they probably get crucified. Now it's going to be something like that. You know what I mean? That's what he does.
He's gonna nail him to the tree of woe.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know that if they infiltrate his main temple, there'll be the big orgy, with cannibalism, and he'll be on his chair. We got all these great images. Like I said, you really can't use them beat for beat because people know the story so well. But with a little modification, it wouldn't take much. Okay, instead of a snake temple, how about spider, like Lolth? Lolth, the spider, the you make the same sort of motif with spiders instead of snakes. A lot of players won't at first blush say, "Oh, this is Conan the Barbarian."
Make it a dragon cult, and
Mm-hmm.
put some dragonborn in there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can substitute the things out. So circling back to something that I kind of alluded to earlier on, and this is one of those things where it's both an excellent bonus but also a danger. I have a tendency to go and grab ideas like this from things that I've seen before, and I've played for a long time. So in a recent group, I grabbed a map from a first edition module, and I was kind of heavily lifting pieces of that, but adapting it to my own campaign and sort of making it fit with, as you say, it's a different cult. I scratched the name off and put a different name of the cult on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem is one of my players has been around as long as I have, and he went, "Oh, I know this map. I've played this like 5 times. Go left up here." And he knew where he was going. And at that point, so if you get a player that recognizes, "Oh, you're doing the Conan the Barbarian thing. I know where this is in the temple. I'm trying to go that way. I'm not going to crawl down in the pit because that's where the giant snake is."
That's where the money is too, though.
Use it against them.
Yeah.
Turn it back on them.
Yeah.
Because if they know that the turning left is the safe way to go, or not going in the pit is the safe way to go, well, gee whiz, my pet snake Reggie needs to get out for a stroll when we need to clean the cage, so he's not in the pit today.
Mm-hmm.
He's in this special other room that I drew on the end of the map, and now he's behind you. It's that kind of adaptability that makes the story so great, but also gives you that opportunity for things to come out differently.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Think on your feet. The player's prime mistake is letting the DM know that they know what's going to happen. Then it's so easy to change it and say, "Well, that's a death trap now. Good luck with that."
Yeah, that's a bad plan. And you can use their anxiety against them. I it's the simplest thing. You trap one door, and it takes us a half an hour to get through any door from that point forward.
That
None of
and
the rest of them are trapped.
that yeah, and separating one person from the party really ramps it up for everybody. Now they're terrified that one person is going to buy it and they can't help, because a party together feels relatively, usually, I mean, most groups, especially fifth edition, they feel pretty confident in their chances if they're all together. But you take, one and separate them, a teleport spell or a trap that they can't get past, except one person, and then that will amp up the anxiety. But yeah, so getting back to the movie, once Conan, gets to Thulsa Doom the first time and is crucified and all that, and then is going to go back after he's resurrected. Which, by the way, I think resurrection. Um, I like that scene in the movie because it shows that it's not like some casual thing. He says a few words, and you're res with full health. And no, there was a trial there. They had painted him with different symbols, and like the devils tried to come for him, and Valeria had to fight him off. I mean, it was like a very dramatic scene that I think that I wish more D&D would do when it came to like raise dead spells. In fact, I've gone so far as to like sometimes ban all resurrection magic from campaigns because just because I think it lessens death when you got. It's just go to town, see the cleric, pay some gold, you're right back again. It's like, well, there's no cost of failing. Then it's simply so. I like that they at least made it like a trial. They had to go through a few things, a few hoops to jump through before they got him back, which I think is something Critical Role does. The show does. They have, when they use a resurrection spell, raise dead spell, whatever, they have to have a special ritual, and they all have to like sort of give something of themselves to help the spell go forward. And there's a roll, and if the rolls fail, then the spell fails. So I think those kind of mechanics make players anxious, and that's what we want. They're tense. They're worried about the outcome. It's not set in stone. That's why we play role-playing games in the first place. If we know what's going to happen, then there's no fun. It's boring.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to tie to that. You're saying about giving something up and giving things up. The one thing we haven't mentioned is you can also use treasures from the movie. The Atlantean sword, is it magic? What are its stats? Is it an intelligent weapon, or is it just purely a magical weapon that was held under magical conditions that only certain people could meet? You have the jade medallion, you have the eye of the serpent, you have his father's sword, which may or may not be magical. There's, you can work that sort of stuff in. The assassins, the serpent fang dagger, is that a silver weapon? Is it magic? You could take any of those things and start piling on your D&D stats to that, and they're fantastic.
Yeah. Like the serpent dagger is a good example, because I would say my first thought was, oh, it's got a poison inside the blade in the hilt that comes out and you stab somebody. So the player might like to have it, but A, it's probably illegal to use it. So if you're caught with it, you're probably going to jail. And B, if you're good alignment, can you even use something, an evil cult weapon, even if it's got great stats? You want to use it, but there's repercussions if you do.
Hook the story to it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Good job. The treasure, the eye of the serpent, they cash it in, then the king gives them a whole bowl full of gems. That's the stuff that is pure Conan, pure early Dungeons and Dragons, where every module had 100,000 gold pieces in it. Really, you could swim in the wealth you might pull out of a dungeon.
You get that one room that's all electrum pieces. You're like, what?
You feel screwed. And also, back in the days, we would hoard this money. I saw a great video on YouTube of another dungeon master saying that he has hit a great idea. I love this idea. Is that adventuring it's like you work hard and you play hard. When you go back to town, you don't have 10,000 gold anymore. You're gonna blow at least half that partying. There's no rolls on it. There's no chance to get around it. You're gonna either tithe to your church, or the roast. You're gonna go out and party with it. Half the money is just gone when you go to town. just because that's the lifestyle. You know what I mean? You go big or
Yep.
go home. But I think it's
Yeah.
hilarious. That's what Conan did. Conan always won these awesome treasures, and it was gone the next story. He would blow
Yeah.
right through all the gems and jewelry.
Yeah. Like, oh, yeah, I think I had that once. I don't know what I did with it. I had it that day, and then I was really drunk.
And I had a prostitute that night. I'm sure I paid like $5,000 for to sleep. And that was it. And it's like but that's hilarious. I think they had the party get this big thing of treasure, go back. They're all proud of themselves, and you say, okay, just take half it off. Why? You guys partied really hard that weekend. Sorry, it's gone. You don't know where it went, and the local
Yeah.
economy just went flush with gold all of a sudden. But yeah. So those are all great things to movie. I think that it's classic fantasy. Sword fights, evil monsters, evil people, treasures that are just like fabulous treasures that would could buy at a castle, but you spend it on ale instead. And of course, a big bad that's bigger than life. And of course, James Earl Jones. Few people can do it ever better than he could do it. That kind of a role, that kind of he brings that gravitas, that the theater actor. He makes it. He elevates the movie. Honestly, he does by his presence and his acting. But for D&D purposes, I like it. He elevates the bad guy. He's not just an NPC sitting in a room in a dungeon waiting to be killed. He's got a plan. He's enacting it. And if you don't step in time the right way, he'll just roll right over you and keep on doing what he's doing. I love that idea. He's not a static token on a board. He is moving around. He's doing his thing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That sounds like something we might have to do in a future video is best villains and what to do with the bad guys. I was gonna give up a couple of secrets right now, but I don't think I'm going to. I think I'm gonna save it for the bad guy video
Okay, good job.
because I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's an important thing for the DM, any DM to know, newbie or not, even the experienced people. It's like have other things happening. The game world that I've created, stuff's going on. If the players are gone, if they leave for 3 weeks, a month, whatever, while they do a delve, things have changed when they get back. Plans were in motion. Ships left. Ships arrived. Diplomats left. Somebody's missing. There's all of these little adventure hooks that just sit out there. They're not just sitting out there waiting.
Mm-hmm.
The world is in motion. So now I have layers of bad guys. I have players that are probably, I forget where we're at, 8th, 9th, 10th level, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't penetrated the second level of the bad guys yet. There's still another level of bad guys.
That's awesome. Yeah,
And
having
that's,
that sort of where the world will feel more real if you have events happening, even if the players aren't watching. When a tree does fall in the woods, it does make a sound. If the PCs aren't there to hear it, when they come back, having things in the village or town be different. You know what? A rumor they got a session ago now is different. A missing daughter was found or found dead. The PCs didn't follow that adventure hook. They didn't find the murderer. And so that person's still at large. Now the new hook is there's 2 more people dead in a similar manner. Now it seems like the character player is like, oh, if someone doesn't step in, wink, wink, us, this serial could keep on going on. So I think that having those layers in there is so vital. And it's something that, it takes time. It takes a lot of reading and planning. But actually, it's not a whole lot of work. It's simply like before each session, spend half an hour brainstorming. What has changed while the adventurers were in the dungeon last session? Just make some notes, then when they come back, they won't see everything, obviously, that happens in a town or a village, but they'll see some signs. That's all they need. If they follow, they don't follow. Anyway, I love that idea. That's awesome, Eric, to have that level, layers of villains to get through. Like any great martial arts movie, you fight the minions the first few scenes, then the lieutenants you had to go through to get to the big boss at the end and have Bruce Lee be victorious after the long boss fight. It works because we like to think that that's how life can be conquered. We fight the
Yeah.
minions at work, and we.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll go straight back to my absolute roots on this one. Lord of the Rings. They've been off on this huge adventure. They get back and someone tries to arrest them in their hometown. Like, wait a minute. What happened? Like
Yeah,
you were away. Things have things have continued to happen.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. That's a good point, and something you could keep in mind for all kinds of stuff. So yeah, so the movie I think obviously is a classic for a lot of reasons, but beyond that, I love the beats of the story. Going from a boy who loses his parents to raiders, to growing up a slave, to having the drive. I think that that's something when a character has that focus when they come into the campaign. I have a drive I'm willing to die or kill for. That gives the DM so much to work off. So many springboards can come off of that. That it's like magic. And then of course, um, having a big bad that is bigger than life. Not just another stat block. I mean, this person has to scare the PCs on some level, at least at first. Otherwise, it's just another troll to kill, another this or that. It becomes rote. It becomes unusual stuff. But and the Conan loses the first encounter and almost dies. That's awesome. If you have your party get defeated and have to retreat or be imprisoned or be crucified in a tree of woe, and
Yeah.
then those are great because now they want revenge 10 times worse than before. And that will make them crazy in a fun way.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think this is a fantastic film to pull pieces from. Like I said, I mean, I've actually done it. I've got 4 or 5 pages of stuff here. I'm probably going to stick this into my own campaign somewhere now that I've done it. Um, for my players, shh, don't listen to that part. um,
If you see
but
Dragonborn run.
I think that when you can do something like this, it gives you so many opportunities as a DM to just you get that feeling like, oh, I'm inspired. What now? Well, what now? Break it down. Get those pieces. Dig those out. Find those, those magic daggers or the serpent's eye. And that's how you can start to build your pieces of your how you run a game
Hmm.
and really get your players engaged. And if you're doing it right, it's just like you say, you know, um, if you ask any of my players about the Immaculate Man, you'll get terrible reactions from them because they hate him. They've made it their mission to destroy him. And he's not, like I said, he's not even the top layer. They've just figured out, they're like, no, we don't like that guy. He's a bastard and we're going to get him.
That is successful DMing right there.
There you go.
That's it.
That's what you hope for.
Yeah, yeah. When it comes up, it's like magic, like
Yeah,
real magic.
exactly.
Oh man. So thank you, Eric, so much. This is a great talk. I really had a lot of fun with this. I hope our audience got some good ideas about how to take their favorite movies or films and sort of break them down and steal the best elements for their own campaigns and make some maps up and make some treasures. But it was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think, maybe we can get some good YouTube comments going of movies that people want to see about adapting or what their thoughts that what things they've adapted before. I think that would be really cool to catch up with that.
Definitely. If you got a great story about something you did for your campaign that you based on a movie or a story or a book or a movie or something, put in the comments, please. I'd love to hear about it. We'll probably both comment. I know we love to swap stories. We'll do it all day
Yeah,
long if you let us.
it'll be great.
All right, buddy. Hey, thanks again for coming
All right.
by.
I look forward
And
to the next one.
yeah, me too. Me too. Thank all of you out there for sitting through this another installment of this Tax of Opportunity. It was fun to do. Please subscribe as always and hit the bell icon down there. And we'll see you next time. Bye bye.